The Supreme Court says migrants with criminal records will be deported, but they won't necessarily be sent to their home countries. A judge ruled yesterday that certain migrants could be sent to countries willing to accept them, including Panama, Costa Rica, Libya, and South Sudan.
People really have no idea how much power the Supreme Court just gave this president. And they also don't fundamentally understand that the power they gave the president just now is not necessarily another law, but it is the power of fear. And I'm talking today about how the Supreme Court just greenlit third country deportations. So, and that's, for example, what happened when people were deported to countries they've never been to. So if you're from Italy, you overstay your visa, you get picked up by ICE, you could end up in Venezuela. It's an insane ruling, and I don't understand why this Supreme Court is treating this president like he is any normal kind of president. Justice Sotomayor's dissent was brutal. She said it was like an arsonist calling 911 on a firefighter for violating a noise ordinance. An absolutely scathing dissent from Sotomayor. And of course, this happens on the same day and week when someone was detained and brutally beaten by ICE. The father of 3 American Marines. So if you grow up and you raise 3 young men to go to the Marines, you could be arrested and sent to a country you have never been to, and those 3 Marines may never hear from you again. And that is what the Supreme Court allowed today.
To deport someone to a country that is not their homeland. Do you understand how, 1, inhumane that is, but 2, how dangerously irresponsible that is? That's number 1. Number 2, a lot of y'all keep asking, how is it that he's able to get away with a lot of this stuff? That the president and this administration is able to continue doing these things that seem to be illegal and getting away with it. Understand the Supreme Court ruled in the case of immunity that the president has immunity from any actions taken while in office as long as they're deemed under the presidential capacity. So every time we got on here was saying how important the Supreme Court was, how powerful the Supreme Court is, and how they can augment the power of the president. This is what we're referring to, because now, which brings me to number 3, there are only certain avenues that can be taken to limit the president's power. And we look to Congress for that. In Congress, we just had a vote where 128 Democrats voted against impeachment.
Now that is what I voted for. I voted for power. I voted for peace through strength. I voted for prosperity. I didn't vote for someone who was just going to twerk with Megan Thee Stallion, whatever that girl's name is, and try to hustle votes. I voted for someone who's going to be an effective leader and who's going to get these illegal immigrants out of this country, because they were eating the dogs and they were eating the cats. And they were trying to be on the dance stage with Beyonce. So we got these illegal immigrants out of here, make America great again.
Shit's getting weird.
What just happened in America should make everyone stop and ask a serious question. When does national security cross the line into institutional cruelty? The Supreme Court of the United States has handed down a decision that changes everything for undocumented immigrants, especially those with criminal records. The ruling gives the government the legal green light to deport those individuals not just to their country of origin, but to third world party nations. And some of those destinations being floated, places like Afghanistan, Libya, South Sudan, countries still torn apart by war, poverty, and systemic chaos. Let's be clear. This isn't just about immigration policy anymore. It's about the soul of a country and the lengths to which a government will go to fulfill a promise of strength and security, even if that means sending people to places they never been, where they know no one and where they could face real, immediate danger. Now, supporters of the ruling are cheering loudly. They are saying this is what they voted for. They see this as restoring order. They say it's about national security. They want illegal immigrants out. Some even go as far as to dehumanize the people being deported. One person grotesquely claiming that immigrants were eating dogs and cats and trying to be on stage with Beyonce, as if cultural misunderstanding justifies human suffering. Others say this is about power, peace through strength, prosperity, that this is how Donald Trump delivers what they believe is strong leadership. But on the other side, there is shock, there is pain, and there is confusion. Critics are calling this decision inhumane, cruel, a violation of international law, because what happens when a woman fleeing gang violence in Central America is deported to Afghanistan, or when a trafficking survivor is put on a plane to South Sudan, countries they've never stepped foot in, countries where they have no language, no family, no protection. This ruling doesn't just deport people, it exiles them. It strips them of basic human dignity. It weaponizes geography, and it opens a chilling new chapter in immigration enforcement. One where being undocumented and previously convicted means you could be cast off to a nation completely unrelated to your life, your history, your culture, or your safety. We are told this is for tightening security, but is it really? Or is this cruelty repackaged in the language of patriotism?
Part infinity. I was almost deported twice. It's true. Okay. But we're not going to talk about that. We're going to talk about the Supreme Court decision. Not even a decision, or their decision, basically. And it's not like a decision on the merits of the case. It's basically saying we're going to let the process play out, let the appellate court kind of do its thing. But until then, we're going to let Trump continue to deport immigrants to third countries, which is crazy, by the way. If you ask me, I think that's absolutely crazy. Because I'm thinking to myself, like, yo, the time that I was deported, like, for example, I was living in another country for a while, and they wanted to deport me out of the country because my visa had expired. So I was in the country for like a cool minute without proper paperwork. So they were going to deport me. Imagine that country was like, we're going to send you to Czechoslovakia instead of the U.S. Wouldn't that be crazy? Wouldn't that be crazy? So what makes this any different? Isn't this is nuts if you ask me. And if you agree with this, you gotta have booty hole crumbles because your decision making is questionable.
Guys, we got big news from the Supreme Court. They've just allowed the McDonald Trump administration in emergency situations to deport migrants to other countries other than their homeland. Now, this is pretty controversial because it means people might be sent to places they've never even been to with no real connections or support there. And here's the thing, guys. This isn't just about sending people back home anymore. It's about making the process harsher and more brutal. It's really raising questions, and a moral one at that. Why are we adding these layers of hardship on vulnerable people? This policy doesn't just make deportation more complicated. It makes it more inhumane, and it really, really doesn't have to be that way. Human rights advocates are deeply concerned about the safety and well-being of these individuals. Some of them are fleeing war zones. Others are survivors of trafficking or abuse. Many have children with them. And now we're just saying we might send them to a third country where they don't know the language, don't have a single family member there, and might even be in danger. This is the kind of policy that pretends to be about national security, but in reality, it's just cruelty repackaged. We should be better than this, guys. We really should.
Let's break this down because the legal precedent this sets is staggering. Up until now, deportations generally meant returning someone to their country of origin. That framework, while already controversial, at least operated under the assumption that individuals should be set somewhere familiar, where they were born, where they had roots, where they spoke the language. But this Supreme Court decision flips that on its head. Under the new interpretation, individuals with criminal records, regardless of how long ago or how minor the offense, can be deported to any country willing to accept them. It doesn't matter if the deportee has ever been to that country. It doesn't matter if they have family there. It doesn't even matter if it's safe. So now, people are being lined up for deportation to nations like Haiti, Niger, or Costa Rica, not because they have ties there, but because those governments are simply willing to take them. Critics have called this legalized banishment. Human rights experts are warning that it may violate international law, particularly agreements on non-refoulement, which forbid sending people to places where they could face torture, persecution, or death. But here's the kicker. Supporters of this policy don't care. In fact, some celebrate the very harshness of it. The cruelty, for them, is part of the appeal. It sends a message. It reinforces their belief that America should be for Americans only, that undocumented immigrants, especially those with any criminal history, should be not only expelled but erased. One supporter outright said, "I voted for Trump to get these people out of here." Another said, "Peace through strength, get them out." This isn't just politics anymore. This is about identity, about punishment, about moral justification for turning our backs on human suffering. And it makes you wonder, when did we stop seeing migrants as people, as human beings? When did we decide that someone fleeing trauma, war, or extreme poverty was no longer worth basic empathy? And let's not pretend everyone being targeted is some hardened criminal. Criminal record could mean anything, from unpaid fines to possession charges, from minor infractions decades old to paperwork violation. The net is wide and the judgment is final. This ruling gives government the power to send people into the unknown, into literal war zone, into failed states, into environments they may never survive, all under the banner of security.
So the court just gave Trump's administration permission to deport illegal immigrants to third world countries, y'all. Places like Afghanistan, Haiti, Niger, Libya, things like that, or whatever, South Sudan. Y'all, I just don't understand. Like, why not just take them back to their country? You know what I'm saying? Like, I hate the whole idea that you even had to have citizenship to even be inside of a fucking country, to be anywhere around this earth, to be on anyone's land, to be on land, just period, because there is no one that owns the land. There is no anyone, not one, that owns the land. If you know what I'm saying, like, a lot of shit is just really just evil and cruel when we think about it, and it really don't make no sense if you ask me. So yeah, but they just definitely just made this vote, the Supreme Court did, to be able to deport illegals to third world countries through the Trump administration. So this is some fucked up shit, but you have some people who really do support this shit.
So here we are, in a moment that future generations will look back on and ask, how did we let this happen? The truth is, this Supreme Court ruling is not just a technical legal decision, it's a moral test, a national mirror, a confrontation with the soul of American justice. Because what we are witnessing isn't simply immigration enforcement. It's the construction of a new kind of cruelty, a system where the punishment isn't just deportation, but abandonment, where people are not only removed but discarded. Imagine being told you're being deported. You prepare, bracing to return to your home country. You think of your childhood, neighborhood, your cousin, your native language, but then they say, no, you're not going home, you're going to Afghanistan or South Sudan or Libya. Imagine the terror. Imagine not knowing the language, not having a contact, not having even a map. You are simply dropped into chaos, into unfamiliar, unstable terrain. You might not survive, but it doesn't matter because you've been labeled a problem, and now, in the eyes of the system, your suffering is the point. This is what the United States, at least under its current leadership and judicial direction, is normalizing. And look, I get it. No one's saying we shouldn't have borders or laws or system of accountability. But when enforcement becomes exile, when deportation becomes banishment, when immigration policy becomes a performance of national power at the expense of human decency, we are no longer talking about law and order. We are talking about something else entirely, control. And this is happening at a moment when the global refugee crisis is at its peak. War, climate change, political collapse, all are driving millions to flee. America has always stood at a moral crossroad when it comes to migration. Will it be the beacon or the barrier? With this ruling, the court has chosen the latter. And to be honest, there is a disturbing political theater here. Supporters love drama of it. The spectacle, the sound bites, they say things like they were eating cats and dogs or trying to dance with Beyonce. It's not just racist, it's dehumanizing. It reduces people, real people, to punchlines. And once you strip someone of their humanity, you can't justify anything, even sending them into danger, even letting them die. Meanwhile, opponents of the policy are accused of being soft, unpatriotic, or bleeding hearts. But empathy is not weakness. Caring about the vulnerable is not treason. Wanting fair treatment is not radical. It's human. And this ruling should be a wake-up call, not just to activists and lawyers, but to anyone who still believes that America should lead not by fear, but by principle. Because what's next? If third world country deportations are legal, how far can it go? Could we see detention centers used to warehouse deportees until a country accepts them? Could we see asylum seekers rerouted to places they've never even heard of? We already know some of these detentions. Afghanistan, Haiti, Niger are not safe. We know this. The State Department has issued its own travel warnings. So how can we send people there in good conscience? We can't, unless this conscience is gone. This is the quiet unraveling of international norms. The subtle yet brutal shift in what the law allows under the guise of national interest. And it's happening in real time. Some will cheer, others will cry, most will simply look away. But we can't afford to look away, because if this is how we treat the most vulnerable among us, those fleeing terror, abuse, poverty, and trauma, then what does that say about us? What does it say about our values? What does it say about our future? In the end, this is not just a story about immigration. It's a story about identity, about power, about the dangerous ease with which a society can turn compassion into a liability and cruelty into policy. And unless more people speak out loudly, relentlessly, this ruling won't be the end. It will be the beginning. Guys, what do you think about this? Drop a comment. Also remember to subscribe, like, and share as well. And until next time, bye-bye.